The red dust of Mars swirled outside the research station's thick windows as Thomas Reed played with his model spaceships. At 12 years old, he knew every detail of each vessel in Earth's defense fleet, having grown up surrounded by military strategy and spacecraft design. His parents' work at the Mars Defense Research Station meant he lived closer to the stars than most kids his age, and he loved every minute of it. Thomas, dinner in 10 minutes. His mother's voice echoed through the station's communication system. Laura Reed was busy analyzing fleet movement patterns in her office, while his father Marcus worked on updating the station's defense protocols. 5 more minutes, Mom. Thomas called back, making whooshing sounds as he flew his favorite model, a replica of Earth's newest battleship, through the air. The setting sun cast long shadows through the window, painting the room in shades of deep orange and red. The first warning sign came as a slight tremor in the station's floor. Thomas barely noticed it, too absorbed in his play. The second sign was harder to ignore. The lights flickered, and the emergency containment alarm began to sound. Warning: unknown vessel detected in proximity. Automated defense systems engaging, the station's AI announced in its calm voice. Thomas jumped to his feet, his heart racing. This wasn't like the drills they practiced. Something felt different. Through the window, he saw it. A massive ship, unlike anything in Earth's fleet. Its surface gleamed with a metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors in the Mars sunset. Smaller objects were detaching from its hull, descending toward the station like metallic raindrops. Thomas, his father's voice crackled through the comm. Get to the safe room now. Move. Thomas grabbed his model ship and ran for the door, but it wouldn't open. The station's systems were malfunctioning, locking and unlocking randomly as unknown signals interfered with their controls. He could hear his parents' urgent voices through the comm system, trying to coordinate a response. The ceiling above him groaned, and then everything happened at once. A beam of pale blue light pierced through the station's roof like it was made of paper. Thomas felt weightless for a moment as the beam passed over him. His model ship floated out of his hands, and then he was floating too. Mom, Dad, he screamed, but the sound seemed distant, muffled. The blue light pulled him upward, through the hole in the ceiling, into the thin Martian atmosphere. His last glimpse of the station showed more beams of light striking different sections, pulling up chunks of equipment and resources. The massive ship grew larger as the beam drew him closer. Thomas tried to swim in the air, to somehow push himself away, but it was useless. His lungs burned. The atmospheric seal of the station had been breached, and the thin Martian air wasn't enough to breathe. Just before he lost consciousness, Thomas saw other objects floating up with him. Computer cores, research equipment, and storage containers. He realized with horror that the ship wasn't specifically targeting him. To whatever force controlled it, he was just another resource to be collected. The last thing Thomas saw was a large opening in the ship's hull, like the mouth of some great space whale, swallowing him and the other collected items. Then darkness took him. Hours later, when emergency response teams from Earth arrived at the Mars Defense Research Station, they found a scene of precise devastation. Specific sections had been surgically removed, while others remained untouched. In the center of it all, Marcus and Laura Reed stood in their emergency suits, staring at the hole in the ceiling of their son's room. The ship's design matches nothing in our database, one of the response team members reported. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. Marcus picked up the model ship that had fallen to the floor during the incident. We'll find him, he promised his wife, who stood rigid with shock beside him. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, we'll find our son. Little did the Empire know that in their automated resource collection, they had just made their greatest mistake. They hadn't just taken a human child. They had taken the son of two of Earth's greatest military minds. And in doing so, they had planted the seeds of their own destruction. The model ship in Marcus's hands was a replica of Earth's most powerful battleship. Soon, the real ones would be launched into space, beginning a search that would change the galaxy forever. 5 years could change anyone, but few changed as much as Thomas Reed, the scared 12-year-old boy who arrived in the Empire's processing facility had become something else entirely. At 17, he moved through the shadows of the massive automated complex like a ghost, his footsteps silent, his movements precise. Today's target was Processing Hub 7, one of the many stations where the Empire's robots sorted their stolen resources. Thomas pressed himself against a wall as a patrol of maintenance drones hummed past. He didn't need to hide anymore. He had long since learned how to fool their sensors, but old habits died hard. His first year in captivity had been the hardest. The Empire's automated systems had classified him as an unknown biological specimen and placed him in a containment cell meant for studying new life forms. The cell was clean and provided food and water, but it was still a cage. Thomas had spent countless hours watching the repair drones work on nearby systems, memorizing their movements, learning their patterns. The second year, he had figured out how to escape his cell. The drones used simple gesture commands to access control panels, and Thomas's human fingers could copy these movements perfectly. But he didn't run. Instead, he explored at night when most systems were in low-power mode. That was how he found the others. Status report. Thomas whispered into a small device he built from scrap parts. The voice that answered wasn't human. It belonged to Blue, a crystalline being from a mining world that the Empire had accidentally scooped up 3 years ago. 2 new arrivals in Block C. Blue's musical voice chimed softly. 1 water breather from Sector 89. 1 atmospheric floater from the Rim worlds. Both scared, both alone. Thomas nodded to himself. Just like we all were. Start the welcome program. I'll visit them after I finish here. He reached the main control panel of Hub 7 and placed his hand on the scanner. Years ago, he had discovered that human touch carried a slight electrical charge that the Empire's systems found fascinating. With some practice, he had learned to vary this charge in ways that made the machines eager to interact with him. The panel lit up with a soft blue glow. Thomas began his work, fingers dancing across the interface. He wasn't just disrupting the facility anymore. He was reprogramming it, piece by piece. Each night, more of the Empire's automated systems began working for him instead of their original masters. Warning signal from Block A. Blue's voice crackled through his device. Empire inspection drone on an unscheduled route. Thomas smiled. The Empire still thought their facilities were fully under their control. They sent inspection drones regularly, but never noticed that the reports they received were carefully crafted lies. The real situation was far different. In the depths of the processing facility, 342 beings from 67 different worlds now lived in a hidden community. Former processing errors, like Thomas, they had turned their prison into a home and their captivity into strength. Thomas finished his work at the panel and headed toward Block C to meet the new arrivals. As he walked, he passed hidden doorways and secret passages that no Empire drone had ever noticed. Behind them, stolen resources were being transformed into tools, weapons, and ships. "They're ready to meet you," Blue announced as Thomas approached Block C. The water breather is named Splash, and the floater calls itself Wind Dancer. Thomas straightened his shoulders. These moments were always important. The first time new arrivals realized they weren't alone, that there was hope. He had come a long way from the frightened boy in a containment cell. Now he was a leader, a teacher, and something the Empire never expected. A threat. As the hidden door to Block C slid open, Thomas thought about his parents. He hoped they were still looking for him, still trying to understand what had happened that day on Mars. Someday, he would find a way back to them. But when he did, he wouldn't be coming alone. He would bring an army. The Empire had made a terrible mistake. They hadn't just captured a human child. They had given him the time, tools, and motivation to learn all their weaknesses. And soon, very soon, they would learn just how costly that mistake had been. Marcus Reed stood at the window of his office on Earth's Lunar Command Base, staring at the red dot of Mars in the distance. 5 years had passed since the day his son disappeared, but the pain hadn't faded. If anything, it had hardened into something stronger: determination. "Admiral Reed," his computer announced, "your wife is here with new data." Laura Reed walked into the office, her arms full of data tablets. In the years since Thomas's disappearance, she had transformed their grief into purpose. While Marcus had climbed the military ranks to become an admiral, Laura had built the most advanced ship tracking system humanity had ever seen. "Look at this," she said, spreading the tablets across his desk. "I've found a pattern in the anomalies. Those unknown ships, they're not random. They're following resource deposits like a harvest route." Marcus studied the data. Hundreds of dots moved across the display, each representing an unexplained disappearance of resources, technology, or in some cases, entire facilities. Most of Earth's government had dismissed these as accidents or equipment failures, but Marcus and Laura knew better. "Here's Mars," Laura pointed to a blinking red dot. "And here's where similar incidents happened in the following months." Her finger traced a line through space, connecting dozens of points. "They're automated. They have to be. The pattern is too precise, too mathematical for living pilots." Marcus nodded slowly. "Like a massive automated harvesting operation. But who built it? And why haven't they ever contacted us?" "Because they don't know we exist," Laura said, her eyes bright with certainty. "Not as intelligent beings, anyway. Look at what they take: metals, compounds, energy sources. Their ships scan for resources and collect them. They probably didn't even realize they took our son." The thought made Marcus's hands clench. Somewhere out there, Thomas had been taken by machines that didn't even recognize him as a living being. "Show me the prediction model," he said. Laura activated another display. "Based on 5 years of data, I can now predict where these ships will appear next. The pattern extends beyond our solar system, way beyond. This isn't just happening to us. It's happening across thousands of star systems. Have you shown this to the Council?" Laura shook her head. "They still think we're just grieving parents chasing shadows. But I found something else." She pulled up a new image, a strange geometric pattern that repeated in the background of every anomaly. "This is their control signal. Every automated ship receives it. If we can decode it, we can track them back to their source." Marcus finished. He walked to the window again, but this time he wasn't looking at Mars. His eyes searched the stars beyond. "Request a meeting with the full military council. Priority 1. They've denied our last 3 requests," Laura reminded him. "This time is different. This time we have proof that Earth isn't alone in the galaxy, and our first contact has been with something that's been stealing from us for years." He turned to face his wife. "And maybe, just maybe, it's been stealing from others too. If we can find those others, we might find Thomas," Laura whispered. Marcus picked up one of the tablets, studying the pattern of dots that represented the unknown ship's movements. After 5 years of searching, they finally had a real lead. Somewhere out there, their son was alive. He had to be. And now they had a way to find him. "Prepare the presentation," he told Laura. "This time, Earth's government will have to listen, because we're not just looking for our son anymore. We're uncovering a threat to our entire world. And if these automated ships are truly part of some vast empire out there in space, then they made a terrible mistake when they took our boy." Laura finished, her voice filled with quiet certainty. The stars seemed to shine brighter that night, as if they too knew that humanity was about to take its first real step into the galaxy. And somewhere out there, though they didn't know it yet, their son was preparing for the same moment. The command center of Processing Hub 7 glowed with soft blue light as Thomas studied the holographic display before him. 5 years of careful planning had led to this moment. Around him, beings from dozens of worlds worked at their stations, each one a former processing error like himself, now turned into a skilled operator. Strike teams in position. Blue's crystalline voice announced. The beam's natural form sparkled under the emergency lights. All 7 facilities are ready. Thomas nodded. Remember everyone, the Empire's machines think in straight lines. They expect things to follow patterns. That's why they'll never see this coming. He looked around at his crew, at the faces and forms of those who had become his family in captivity. Begin Operation Ghost. Across 7 different processing facilities, carefully hidden programs activated simultaneously. In Facility 12, all the lights turned green instead of blue. In Facility 34, the gravity reversed for exactly 3 seconds. In Facility 67, all doors opened and closed in a pattern that matched an old Earth song Thomas remembered from his childhood. The Empire's automated systems didn't know how to handle such random, meaningless actions. As they devoted resources to investigating these strange occurrences, Thomas's real attack began. Second wave, now, he commanded. Hidden throughout each facility, small teams of rebels began moving. They weren't trying to destroy the facilities. They were taking them over, one system at a time. Warning, an automated voice announced throughout the complex. Unknown errors detected in primary systems. Initiating diagnostic sequence. Thomas smiled. The diagnostic sequence was exactly what they wanted. As the facility's systems turned their attention inward, searching for the source of the errors, his teams were slipping through the gaps in their defenses. Hub 34 is ours, reported Wind Dancer, the atmospheric being floating near the ceiling. Hub 12 reports success. Hub 67 is facing resistance but adapting. Thomas watched as the holographic display showed more and more systems turning from Empire red to Rebel green. He had learned over the years that the Empire's greatest weakness was their absolute trust in their machines. They never expected anyone to understand their technology well enough to turn it against them. Multiple inspection drones launching from Central Control, Blue warned. They'll reach the nearest facility in 10 minutes. Perfect timing, Thomas said. Launch Phase 3. Throughout the facilities, hundreds of hidden transmitters activated. Each one sent out a different signal, creating a chaos of communication that overwhelmed the inspection drone sensors. It was like trying to hear a whisper in a room full of shouting people. Sir, a small reptilian being rushed into the command center. We found something in Hub 12's data core. The Empire. They're not just collecting from uninhabited worlds. They're stealing from developing civilizations across the galaxy. Thousands of them. Thomas felt his heart race. This was bigger than he had imagined. The Empire wasn't just a threat to Earth. They were systematically plundering countless worlds that were just beginning to reach for the stars. Send the data to all facilities, he ordered. Every rebel needs to understand what we're fighting for. This isn't just about escape anymore. This is about stopping them. The next hour was a blur of activity as more and more systems fell under rebel control. The Empire's automated responses became increasingly confused, trying to follow protocols that had never been designed to handle such a situation. All 7 facilities secured. Blue announced finally, "We have complete control." Thomas looked at the holographic display, now showing 7 green dots in a sea of red Empire territory. It wasn't much compared to the Empire's vast holdings, but it was a start. More importantly, it was proof that the Empire could be beaten. Send the message, he told his communications team. To every species we found, every world they're stealing from. Tell them that the Empire isn't invincible. Tell them that together, we can fight back. As the message went out, Thomas thought about Earth, about his parents. Soon, they would know that their son wasn't just alive. He had become the Empire's worst nightmare. The ghost in their perfect machine, teaching others how to haunt them too. Deep within the Empire's central command sphere, High Commander Dax stared at the holographic reports with growing concern. For the first time in 300 years, someone had taken control of not 1, but 7 processing facilities. The automated systems that had run perfectly for centuries were acting strangely, and no one knew why. Bring up the facility feeds, he ordered. His metallic throne adjusted automatically as he leaned forward, 6 eyes focusing on the multiple screens that appeared before him. The Empire's ruling class had grown so dependent on their machines that many, like Dax, had merged with them, becoming cyborgs. The screens showed chaos. Doors opening and closing without reason. Gravity fields fluctuating. Resource sorting systems reorganizing materials into strange patterns. But what disturbed him most was that the facilities were still operating, just not for the Empire. "Status report," he demanded. A junior analyst stepped forward, her cybernetic implants glowing nervously. "Sir, we've detected an intelligence operating within our systems. It's unlike anything we've encountered before. It doesn't think like our machines." "Explain." "Our automated systems are designed to follow logical patterns, to find the most efficient solution to any problem. But this intelligence creates chaos deliberately. It uses randomness as a weapon. Our systems can't predict what it will do because it doesn't follow any rational pattern." Dax's mechanical parts whirred as he processed this information. "Show me the first anomaly. When did this begin?" The screen shifted, showing data from 5 years ago. A routine resource collection mission from a primitive system. Nothing special, except for one small detail that had been overlooked. There, the analyst pointed. A biological reading that didn't match any known pattern. The collection ships categorized it as an unknown specimen and brought it in for processing. "Find it," Dax ordered. "Search the facility records. I want to know what this specimen became." The search took hours. The Empire's vast database was designed to track resources, not individual beings. But finally, they found something. Security footage from a containment cell. A small creature, standing on 2 legs, watching the repair drones work. "Magnify," Dax commanded. The image zoomed in on the creature's face. It looked so simple, so primitive. But its eyes were studying everything, learning, understanding. "Species identification complete," the computer announced. "Subject is human, from the planet Earth, Sol system. Technological level, pre-interstellar. Threat level, minimal." Dax wasn't so sure about that last part. "Show me current footage of the taken facilities." New images appeared, and there he was. The same being, now grown larger but still recognizable. He moved through the facility like he owned it, commanding others, coordinating actions that made no logical sense, but somehow worked perfectly. "Sir," another analyst called out, "we're detecting transmissions from the captured facilities. They're broadcasting to everything. Every world we collect from, every system we harvest. The human is telling them how to fight back." Dax stood, his mechanical legs lifting him to his full height. "Send a message to Earth, to their leaders. Tell them we know they have an agent operating in our territory. Tell them to recall him or face consequences." "Sir," the first analyst said quietly, "I don't think he's their agent. I think we took him by accident, and he learned how to use our own systems against us." For the first time in his long life, Dax felt something close to fear. The Empire had built its power on automation, on machines that followed strict rules and patterns. But now they faced something that didn't follow rules. A human mind that had learned their technology from the inside out. "Send more drones," he ordered. "Take back those facilities." "Sir, we've tried. The drones go in, but they don't come back." He's not destroying them. He's converting them, teaching them new ways to think. Dax stared at the image of the human on the screen. Such a simple creature, from such a primitive world. But in their arrogance, in their reliance on automated systems, the Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had created their own worst enemy. And now they had to deal with the consequences. Admiral Marcus Reed stood on the bridge of the Earth battleship Vengeance, watching as his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Ahead of them loomed Processing Hub 9, one of the Empire's largest automated facilities. But this time, they weren't coming in blind. "Message from Control," his communications officer announced. Dr. Laura Reed's tracking system confirms heavy activity inside the facility. Someone's fighting the Empire's forces from within. Marcus nodded. He had recognized the pattern of attacks instantly. They'd matched the tactical exercises he used to practice with Thomas on Mars. His son wasn't just alive. He was leading a rebellion against the Empire. All ships, battle positions, he ordered. Remember, we're not here to destroy the facility. We're here to take it. He touched the model spacecraft that still hung from a chain around his neck. The same one Thomas had been playing with 5 years ago. Inside the facility, Thomas and his rebel forces were already in motion. His security screens showed the approaching Earth fleet, and his heart nearly stopped when he saw the formation they were using, his father's favorite attack pattern. "Blue, Wind Dancer, get everyone to their stations," he commanded. "Earth forces are here, and they're not coming as enemies." He paused, emotion catching in his throat. "They're coming for me." The battle began as a dance of light and shadow. The Earth fleet's weapons targeted the facility's external defenses with surgical precision, while Thomas's rebels disabled the internal systems. Empire drones rushed to respond, but found themselves caught between two forces that understood their programming better than they did. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from inside the facility. It's in English, sir." Marcus's hands gripped the command rail. "Put it through." "Hello, Dad." Thomas's voice filled the bridge, deeper than Marcus remembered, but unmistakably his son's. "Your attack pattern could use some updating. 5 years is a long time in tactical development." Tears formed in Marcus's eyes, but his voice remained steady. "Then why don't you come show me what you've learned, son?" "Sending you a safe docking route now," Thomas replied. "Mom's tracking algorithms were brilliant, by the way. They've helped us predict Empire movements across 3 sectors." Laura's voice broke in from Earth control. "Thomas, baby, is that really you?" "Hi, Mom," Thomas said softly. "I've got some friends I'd like you to meet. About 300 of them, from 67 different worlds. Think Earth can help them get home." Marcus watched as his fleet's tactical display updated with new information streaming from the facility. Thomas wasn't just giving them a way-in. He was sharing everything he'd learned about the Empire's systems. The next hour was organized chaos. Earth forces breached the facility following Thomas's guidance, while his rebels systematically shut down the Empire's automated defenses. The machines, programmed to expect attacks from outside, had no protocols for dealing with enemies who understood their code from the inside. Finally, Marcus stood before a massive door deep within the facility. His Marine escort raised their weapons as the door began to open, but he waved them down. He knew who was on the other side. Thomas stepped through the doorway, taller than Marcus remembered, his face harder but his eyes still the same. Behind him stood an amazing collection of beings, crystalline forms, floating creatures, beings of light and shadow, all watching with what seemed like pride. Father and son stared at each other for a long moment. Then Thomas smiled, the same smile Marcus remembered from countless breakfast tables on Mars, and stepped forward into his father's embrace. "The Empire made a mistake," Thomas said quietly. "They took me from my family. So I built a new one, and together we're going to make them regret it." Marcus held his son tight, feeling the strength that had replaced childhood softness. "No, son," he replied. "Their mistake was thinking they could break you. Instead, you've done what humanity has dreamed of for centuries. You've united different species against a common enemy." Through the facility's vast windows, they could see more Earthships arriving, and in the distance, the first vessels from other worlds who had received Thomas's call for rebellion. The Empire's age of automated theft was ending, and it all began because they took one small boy from Mars. High Commander Dax stood in the Empire's central control chamber, watching as red warning lights spread across the galactic map. It had been 3 months since the human child's identity had been discovered, and everything was falling apart. 20 more facilities have gone dark, an analyst reported, her cybernetic implants flickering with stress. The Rebel Alliance is using our own collection ships against us. They're not just fighting back, they're freeing every world we've harvested from. On the other side of the galaxy, Thomas Reed stood on the bridge of a converted Empire vessel, now renamed Ghost of Mars. Around him, his original Rebel team worked alongside Earth military personnel and representatives from dozens of freed worlds. The Empire's falling back to their core systems, Blue reported, crystal form glowing with excitement. Their automated defense network is collapsing. They never programmed it to handle attacks from so many different species working together. Thomas nodded, studying the tactical display. After years of learning the Empire's systems from the inside, he could predict their responses before they happened. That's why they called him the Ghost General now. He haunted the Empire's perfect machine order with chaos they couldn't comprehend. "Launch Operation Freedom," he commanded. "All ships, all sectors, just like we planned." Across thousands of star systems, a coordinated attack began. But this wasn't just a military strike. It was a revolution of information. Every world that had ever been harvested by the Empire received complete data on how their automated systems worked, how to resist them, and how to turn their own technology against them. In the Empire's control chamber, Dax watched in horror as more and more systems turned green, indicating successful rebellions. "How?" he demanded. "How can one primitive species cause so much damage?" "Because you never understood what makes humans different." Thomas's voice came through every speaker in the chamber. "We don't think like your machines. We adapt. We improvise. We overcome." Holographic screens appeared around Dax, showing him the full scope of what was happening. Earth ships flew in formation with vessels crewed by beings of pure energy. Crystal entities like Blue worked alongside floating gas creatures to hack Empire systems. Former enemies united against their common oppressor. "Your empire was built on taking things," Thomas continued. "Resources, technology, even living beings, all scooped up by your automated systems without care or consequence. But you took something else too. You took my childhood. You took me from my family. And in doing so, you taught me everything I needed to know to destroy you." Admiral Reed's voice joined his son's. "This is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not our technology, not our military strength, but our ability to unite different peoples against tyranny. You thought you could break us. Instead, we've broken your empire." The final battle wasn't fought with weapons. It was won with code, with knowledge, with the combined wisdom of 67 species all working together. The Empire's automated systems, designed to enforce order, couldn't handle the creative chaos of thousands of different minds working as one. One by one, the Empire's core worlds fell, not to destruction, but to liberation. The cyborg ruling class, so dependent on their machines, found themselves powerless against the tide of freedom. Thomas stood with his parents on the observation deck of the Ghost of Mars, watching as the Empire's central control sphere transformed from red to green on their tactical display. Behind them, representatives from hundreds of worlds celebrated their victory. "What happens now?" Laura Reed asked her son, seeing not just the teenager who had returned to them, but the leader he had become. Thomas smiled, looking out at the stars that had once been his prison and were now a promise of adventure. "Now we rebuild, not as separate species, not as empire or rebels, but as a united galaxy." He turned to face the assembled beings who had become his second family. "And we make sure no empire ever makes this mistake again." The Ghost General had completed his mission. The boy taken from Mars had grown into humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. A bridge between worlds, a breaker of chains, and a reminder that the strongest power in the universe wasn't technology or order, but the simple human ability to adapt, unite, and overcome.